Hey everyone! Today we're exploring another chilling and disturbing case. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and stay engaged. It really means a lot. I truly appreciate it. Now, take a deep breath and let's dive in. She was a definition of elegance, raised in wealth, draped in luxury, and adored by everyone who knew her. From the golden streets of Dubai to the quiet neighborhoods of Canada, her life seemed like a fairy tale. But on the night she tied the knot, that dream unraveled in the most brutal way imaginable. On her wedding night, just hours after saying I do, the bride was found dead, beaten mercilessly inside a hotel suite. The groom confessed, but this wasn't just an act of sudden rage. What he claimed to have discovered about his new wife in the hours before her death left investigators stunned, and the world asking, who was the real woman behind the veil? She was known in Dubai's elite social circles as radiant, ambitious, and desirable. Men wanted her. Women envied her. Her groom, a wealthy Canadian businessman of Middle Eastern descent, thought he had found the perfect wife. Their union was celebrated by both families with a lavish wedding that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. But beneath the glittering gowns and staged Instagram photos, the bride was living a double life, one that her husband would only uncover too late. Hours after the wedding, while his bride showered, the groom picked up her phone. What he saw shattered everything. Thousands of explicit messages, photos, proof of multiple affairs, not just casual flings, but relationships spanning years. One lover was a married politician in Dubai. Another, a Canadian man she'd promised to run away with. And most disturbingly, she had been collecting money and expensive gifts from them all. She wasn't just unfaithful. To him, she was a fraud. A woman who had played him, their families, and perhaps even the institution of marriage itself. The groom snapped. Investigators would later describe the crime scene as one of the most violent they had ever seen. She was beaten beyond recognition. The wedding gown torn. The bed soaked in blood. Neighbors reported hearing screams. Pleas that were silenced before anyone could reach her. Officer, it wasn't a fight. It was an execution of pure rage. When arrested, the groom admitted everything. But instead of remorse, he painted himself as a victim, claiming his wife's deception drove him to madness. The defense argued crime of passion. The prosecution called it calculated brutality. She had lived two lives, and both collided on that wedding night in the most tragic way possible. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because as investigators dug deeper, they discovered the bride's double life was far more dangerous than anyone realized. Affairs with powerful men, secret bank accounts, and a hidden plan that could explain why she married him in the first place. Was she a victim of betrayal, or was he the final pawn in her game? The world was already horrified by the murder of the Dubai bride on her wedding night in Canada. But when police began digging into her past, they uncovered a twisted web of lies, betrayal, and greed. This wasn't just about infidelity. This was about power, wealth, and a woman who seemed to live three lives at once. She wasn't just unfaithful to her husband. She had been running multiple relationships, sometimes simultaneously. Investigators uncovered at least 5 men across Dubai, London, and Toronto. Each one thought he was her only true love. Each one had given her expensive gifts, luxury cars, and in one case, a condo in downtown Toronto. Detective. She was charismatic, magnetic, almost addictive. The men who got involved with her lost control of their money, their marriages, even their reputations. One of her lovers was a married politician in Dubai, wealthy, powerful, and deeply religious in public. But in private, investigators found messages that revealed not only a sexual relationship, but also secret financial transactions. He had wired her hundreds of thousands of dollars, disguised as business investments. If the scandal went public, it could destroy him, and it gave her leverage, dangerous leverage. Then came the most chilling discovery. Just 2 months before the wedding, the groom had signed a multi-million-dollar life insurance policy, naming his bride as the sole beneficiary. Investigators began to wonder, was she planning to play him too? Was her wedding night always meant to end in tragedy? But with him as a victim? Friend, she always said men were tools. That you just had to figure out which one to use for what. She loved the lifestyle, the power, the thrill of keeping secrets. Honestly, I'm not sure she was even capable of real love. By the time the groom saw the messages, the photos, and the proof of her double life, investigators believe he had already begun to unravel. To him, this wasn't just betrayal. It was a revelation that he had been nothing more than another pawn in her dangerous game. That realization, combined with a life insurance policy, may have triggered the violent rage that ended her life. But what if he wasn't the only one who wanted her silenced? Because as police dug deeper, they uncovered evidence that someone else, someone powerful, had just as much to lose if her secrets were ever exposed. And this led investigators to a shocking theory. Was her death really a crime of passion, or was it an execution? One of her lovers, the married Dubai politician, was no ordinary man. He was wealthy, influential, and fiercely protective of his image. Investigators uncovered encrypted messages showing that, just days before the wedding, she had threatened to expose their affair unless he sent her more money. Detective, she knew too much, and she wasn't afraid to use it. If those messages ever went public, it could ruin him. But here's the twist. The phone that held all her secrets, her affairs, her bank transfers, her leverage, vanished. It was logged as evidence at the hotel crime scene. But when investigators went back to retrieve it, the device was gone. Gone without a trace. The groom had admitted to the killing, but under questioning, his story began to fracture. First, he said he saw her phone and snapped. Then, he claimed he never saw her phone at all. Prosecutors accused him of lying, but some investigators began to wonder, was he covering for someone, or was someone forcing him to take the blame? In Canada, whispers began spreading that powerful figures may have intervened. Why? Because if the bride's double life was fully exposed, it wouldn't just take down a politician in Dubai. It could reveal a network of men, businessmen, religious leaders, even law enforcement officers, who were all tied to her in ways they could never afford to admit. This was no longer just a crime of passion. It was beginning to look like a cover-up. But here's the most shocking twist of all. In the weeks after her death, new evidence surfaced that suggested the bride knew she was going to die. A hidden message, a chilling warning, and a note left behind that might prove she'd been marked for death long before her wedding night. In the days after her death, police searched her belongings more thoroughly. Inside her suitcase, tucked between silk dresses and designer shoes, they found a small black journal. Its pages revealed a woman living in fear. Fear not of her groom, but something or someone far more dangerous. They say I'm playing with fire, but if I stop, they'll destroy me. If anything happens to me, know that it wasn't an accident. She had also made a phone call to one of her closest friends in Dubai just days before the wedding. According to that friend, her voice was shaking. She allegedly said, "If I don't make it past this wedding, don't believe the story they tell you." She never explained what she meant. The groom's confession suddenly seemed less clear. If she knew she was in danger before the wedding, did he really kill her in a fit of rage, or was he just a perfect fall guy? Some began to wonder if the brutality of her murder was meant to send a message, violent enough to scare others into silence. But the most haunting discovery came from the wedding veil itself. Sewn discreetly into the fabric was a tiny piece of paper with a single line written in Arabic. Translated, it read, "The truth will bury me before I can bury it." Had she uncovered something so dangerous it sealed her fate? Was her groom really the villain? Or was he just another victim in her deadly game? And who, exactly, had the most to gain from her silence? She wasn't just living a double life. She was juggling multiple lives. And each one came with a man who believed he was special, chosen, irreplaceable. But in truth, every one of them had a reason to want her gone. The first was a politician, a family man with a reputation built on religious purity. He couldn't risk exposure. If his affair with her became public, it would end his career, destroy his family, and ruin him financially. To him, she wasn't just a lover. She was a threat. "You think you can own me, but I control everything now." Her last message to him. Hours later, she would be dead. Then there was a Canadian businessman who bought her a downtown condo. He had invested millions in her lifestyle. But according to investigators, She had drained his accounts dry, and when he confronted her, she promised him something terrifying, that if he didn't keep paying, she'd ruin his reputation with proof of their relationship. He told a friend, "She'll be the death of me." No one knew how literal those words would become. And then the married father, a man who lived a quiet, middle-class life until she came along. She had seduced him, convinced him to fund her shopping trips, and threatened to tell his wife if he pulled away. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, but he had everything to lose. And of course, the groom, the man who, by all appearances, snapped when he discovered her double life. But now investigators wondered, did he truly act alone, or was he just the easiest man to blame? All four men had motive, all four men had secrets, and all four men had something to gain from her silence. But only one ended up in prison. Was it justice or was it a setup? But then investigators uncovered one final lead. A mysterious bank transfer made just 48 hours before the wedding. Money that originated from an offshore account and disappeared without a trace. Was it payment for her silence or a payout for her murder? Every crime leaves a trail. Sometimes it's blood, sometimes it's secrets. But in this case, the trail was money, and it led investigators to a theory that would blow this case wide open. That the Dubai bride's wedding night wasn't tragedy of passion at all. It was a calculated execution. 2 days before the wedding, a large wire transfer was made. $2.5 million. The sender, an offshore account linked to a shell company. The recipient, unknown. The timing was no coincidence. To investigators, it looked like payment. But payment for what? Some began to wonder, was a hitman involved? Could someone have entered that hotel room and carried out the killing, leaving the groom to take the blame? After all, the brutality of the crime didn't match his profile. He had no history of violence, no criminal record. Yet the attack was savage, efficient, almost professional. We couldn't ignore it. The money, the missing phone, the power players involved. There were too many signs this wasn't just a domestic dispute gone wrong. But the groom wasn't talking. After his initial confession, he shut down completely. Some say he was protecting someone. Others say he was threatened. His lawyers hinted at outside pressure, but never explained what that meant. And then came the twist. Investigators found evidence that the life insurance policy, worth millions, had been altered shortly before the wedding. The bride wasn't just a beneficiary. There was a secondary beneficiary listed, a name tied directly to one of her powerful lovers. Was this all part of a larger plot? Was the groom a murderer? Or a scapegoat in a conspiracy designed to bury the secrets of men who couldn't afford exposure? The deeper investigators dug, the more they realized someone was pulling the strings. The Dubai bride's death was brutal. The groom confessed. But behind the blood and broken vows, investigators found evidence of something far more sinister. This wasn't just about love, or even betrayal. This was about control, power, and men who moved in the shadows like puppet masters, pulling strings no one could see. The politician lover wasn't just powerful in Dubai. He had connections that stretched into Europe, North America, even Canada. He sat on boards. He funded charities. He controlled companies through layers of secrecy. If his affair came out, it wouldn't just destroy his career. It could unravel an entire empire. And to men like him, silence is worth any price. The Canadian businessman wasn't far behind. He had millions tied up in real estate, private investments, offshore accounts. Investigators began to suspect his generosity toward the bride wasn't just infatuation. It was laundering, using her as a front to move money that couldn't be traced. And when she started threatening him, she became a liability. Inside jail, the groom's behavior grew more erratic. He stopped eating. He refused visitors. Guards overheard him whispering that they'll kill me next. But when asked who they were, he stayed silent. To some investigators, this was proof. He wasn't just guilty, he was scared. First, the bride's phone vanished. Then, the offshore wire transfer records disappeared from the Canadian bank system. Even CCTV footage from the hotel had sections mysteriously corrupted. Someone was reaching deep into the investigation, erasing every lead that pointed to a larger conspiracy. At this point, the case no longer looked like a tragedy. It looked like a cover-up orchestrated by powerful men, puppet masters who would rather bury the truth than risk exposure. The groom sat in a cell, the bride lay in her grave, and the men who may have benefited most remained untouchable. A woman's whisper echoes faintly. Don't believe the story they tell you. But then, investigators uncovered one final lead, a voice recording. The bride's voice captured just days before her death. And in that recording, she named names. Men she feared. Men she said would never let her walk away alive. Buried inside her encrypted emails was an audio file, time-stamped just 72 hours before the wedding. In it, her voice is trembling but deliberate. If you are hearing this, it means I didn't make it. I need you to know the truth. They won't let me leave. Not him, not the others. They said marriage was the only way to protect me. But I know it's a lie. They are all the same. And if I disappear, it's because of them. She didn't stop there. In the recording, she listed names, powerful men, the same men investigators had quietly suspected all along. A politician, a businessman, a religious leader, and, chillingly, her own groom. Each one, she claimed, had manipulated her, threatened her, or used her for their own gain. And she believed all of them had reason to see her dead. When the recording was revealed in court, the groom broke his silence. He screamed that he was innocent, that he was framed, that he had been forced to confess. But the damage was done. The jury didn't believe him. He was sentenced to life in prison. But even with the recording, key pieces of evidence had vanished. The offshore transfer, the missing phone, the corrupted CCTV footage. Without it, the other men named in her message walked free. No charges, no consequences, no justice. To this day, the truth of who orchestrated her death remains buried under layers of money, corruption, and silence. The bride knew her fate. She left behind warnings. And in her final words, she spoke the truth. But the puppet masters she feared most are still out there. She thought her marriage would protect her. Instead, it became her coffin. And the men who wanted her gone may never face justice. Her story is over. But her voice, captured from beyond the grave, will haunt us forever. What are your thoughts on this case? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more stories, where each case isn't just about crime, but also offers a lesson for life.